Good evening. Today is February 15th, 2024, and this is the voting session of the Ways and Means Committee. First up, House Bill 16. Delegate Attar.
Thank you, Madam Chair. House Bill 16 requires property tax bills to include a separate insert about the Homeowners Protection Program that encourages taxpayers to make voluntary donations to the program through SDAT's website. And it also imposes a $15 fee on each tax sale certificate and dedicates the revenue to the Homeowners Protection Program, and I move the bill.
Any discussion? Delegate Buckle.
Confirm it. So this $15 fee, it's new, is that correct? And it's assessed upon the purchaser of the tax sale certificate at the time they take the certificate from the taxing authority? Okay, thank you, I appreciate it.
Any other discussion on the bill? Okay, we're going to do a roll call on the favorable House Bill 16. Madam Vice Chair?
Yes.
Delegate Ebersol? Yes. Delegate Patterson? Yes. Delegate Buckle? No. Delegate Wells? Yes. Delegate Hornberger? Delegate Fair? Yes. Delegate Long? No. Delegate Young? Delegate Miller? Delegate Henson? Delegate Roberts? Yes. Delegate Grossman? Yes. Delegate Wims? Delegate Vogel? Delegate Wu? Yes. Delegate Hartman? Yes. Delegate Miracle North? Yes. Delegate Griffith? Delegate Attar? Yes. Delegate Plakovich-Carr? Yes. Delegate Feldmark? Yes. House Bill 16 passes as favorable. House Bill 25, Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I believe we had a thorough vetting of this legislation yesterday during the hearing. I don't think that we have a need for this bill, and I trust our librarians in our schools. I would like to move unfavorable.
Okay, is there a discussion on the unfavorable?
Just clarifying, this isn't the one from yesterday. This is the one from January the 31st.
Correct. Similar. Yep.
That's true.
Yes. Same, essentially similar topics, but yes. Any discussion on the unfavorable? Okay. All in favor of the unfavorable signify by raising your hand. Any opposed to the unfavorable? So, who's doing it? It's a party line vote, but Haley's not there, which is why I was confused. Okay.
I got it.
Somebody got it. Okay. Somebody's got it. Okay, House Bill 25 does not pass committee. House Bill 40, Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. House Bill 40, Election Law, Post-Election Tabulation Audits, Risk Limiting Audits. This bill requires a statewide risk limiting audit and a local risk limiting audit in each county before the certification of each election. Members, as you know from our previous discussion on this bill, RLA is known as the gold standard of certification of elections, and we really hope to adopt this method here in the state of Maryland. I move favorable on House Bill 40.
Any discussion? Delegate Buckle?
Briefly, I appreciate, Madam Vice Chair, the bill does obviously a lot of good things, and I appreciate the gold standard. Does it remove in some way, form, or fashion a manual audit requirement? That's what my notes reflected, at least, that it does remove some existing law that mandated or allowed for certain manual audits.
The risk limiting audit. The risk limiting audit is a manual audit. It's just a more scientific and efficient way of doing a manual audit. So we're not going to continue to do a fixed percentage audit. We're going to do the scientifically and statistically valid risk limiting audit,
So
which is a manual inspection of
Great.
ballots.
So the risk limiting audit is not simply some type of digital examination or something like that. It's actually a scientific, intelligent, but kind of old school way of we're actually looking at the cast ballots and auditing them themselves.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm happy to support that.
And just to further explain for you, when we say risk limit, what we mean is that what is the chance that we don't need to count every single ballot in order to, that's what the risk limiting part of it is. So it's still, as he said, you're still manually double checking the votes, but we're using science and math to be more efficient.
Any further discussion? Okay, we're going to do a roll call on the favorable. Madam Vice Chair?
Yes.
Delegate Ebersol?
Yes.
Delegate Patterson? Yes. Delegate Buckle? Delegate Wells? Yes. Delegate Hornberger? Yes. Delegate Fair? Yes. Delegate Long? Delegate Young? Delegate Miller? Delegate Henson? Delegate Roberts? Yes. Delegate Grossman? Delegate Wims? Yes. Delegate Vogel? Yes. Delegate Wu? Yes. Delegate Hartman? Delegate Miracle North? Delegate Griffith? Yes. Delegate Attar? Yes. Delegate Plakovich-Carr? Yes. Delegate Feldmark? Yes. House Bill 40 passes as favorable. House Bill 60. Delegate Plakovich-Carr.
House Bill 60 modernizes the definition of disability for the purposes of statutory law relating to the division of rehabilitative services within the State Department of Education. That is the state entity responsible for administering federal laws related to the enablement of disabled individuals to become employed and function independently. The definition is altered from one that focuses on defects or infirmities to one that describes physical and mental impairment resulting in an impediment. Move favorable.
Is there a second? Any discussion? Okay, all in favor of the favorable House Bill 60, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? House Bill 60 passes as favorable. House Bill 63, Delegate Attar.
House Bill 63 expands an optional local property tax credit to include veterans with a non-permanent service-connected disability of 100%, and I move favorable.
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? House Bill 63 passes as favorable. House Bill 174, and there are amendments. Delegate Attar.
As amended, House Bill 174 imposes a fee of $100 on unsuccessful property tax appeals to the Maryland Tax Court for income producing property valued greater than $5 million. The amendment imposes the fee after the appeal is decided and only on taxpayers who are unsuccessful. I move the amendment.
Any discussion on the amendment? Delegate Griffith?
Just very briefly, myself and Delegate Hartman had a couple concerns in the bill during the hearing. Very grateful for Delegate Attar for amending that and making sure we're staying up for people that did nothing wrong, and so I support the bill, so thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay, is there a motion on the bill as amended? Any discussion on the bill as amended? Okay, all those in favor of House Bill 174 as amended signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, House Bill 174 passes. Oh, there was an opposed. There was a nay. Delegate Long should be recorded as a nay. And House Bill 174 passes as amended. House Bill 204, Delegate Ebersol.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
The bill requires MSDE in collaboration with the Maryland Department of Health each county board and the Maryland Public Secondary Schools Athletic Association to develop guidelines for public schools to train coaches in recognizing indicators of mental illness and behavioral distress. Similar training is produced by the Maryland Higher Education Commission and offered to coaches in institutions of higher education. The bill's in the same form as it passed out of the House last year. Do you want me to wait? Well, I don't want to move it if, you know.
Yeah,
Okay, there's been a request to hold the bill.
that's fine.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, House Bill 174 is being held. I'm sorry, 204. Sorry. House Bill 287, and there are amendments. Delegate Attar.
House Bill 287 excludes retirement plans from the calculation of assets when determining eligibility for the renter's tax credit, and the amendment is technical. I move the amendment.
Any discussion on the technical amendment? Delegate Henson.
Is this bill open to add on a co-sponsor amendment?
Yes, so the rule for the committee is if there are already amendments that have to be done, you can hop on the bill. So how many people would like to be added on? Raise your hand. Okay, so I'm gonna call them out loud. Are you taking notes? Okay. Delegate Eversole, Delegate Wells, Delegate Hornberger, Delegate Fair, Delegate Long, Delegate Young, Delegate Henson. Am I going too fast? Madam Vice Chair, Delegate Grossman, Delegate Vogel, Delegate Wims, Delegate Wu, Delegate Miracle North, Delegate Roberts, Delegate Attar, Delegate Palakovich-Carr, and Delegate Feldmark. Okay. I don't know if we did this, but is there a motion on the bill as amended? Okay. Okay. All in favor of the bill as amended signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, House Bill 287 passes favorably as amended. House Bill 331, and there are amendments. Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. House Bill 331, Election Law, Candidate Expenditures, Campaign-Related Child Care Expenses. Colleagues, you probably remember this bill, which is one that codifies the SBE's current guidance that campaign funds can be spent for child care that is necessary to promote a campaign. There is an amendment on the bill to expand this legislation to include caregiving services for an adult with a disability. I move the amendment.
Any discussion on the bill or on the amendment, excuse me? Okay, is there a motion on the bill as amended? Any discussion on the bill as amended? Okay. We are going to do a roll call, and if you'd like to be added, just say me too or add my name. So the motion is for a favorable on the bill as amended. Madam Vice Chair.
Yes.
Delegate Ebersol.
Yes.
Delegate Patterson. Yes. Delegate Buckle. Delegate Wells. Delegate Hornberger. Delegate Fair. Delegate Long. Delegate Young. Delegate Miller. Delegate Henson. Delegate Roberts. Delegate Grossman. Delegate Wims. Delegate Vogel. Delegate Wu. Delegate Hartman. Delegate Miracle North. Delegate Griffith. Delegate Attar. Delegate Palakovich-Carr. Delegate Feldmark. Yes. And the chair votes yes, and me too. Okay, House Bill 331 passes favorably as amended. House Bill 416, Delegate Ebersol.
Thank you, Madam Chair. House Bill 416 prohibits mandatory active shooter safety drills or trainings from including loud sounds, role-playing, and other activities that may traumatize students or school personnel. It tasks the Maryland Center for School Safety, known as MCSS, to identify best practices for those drills or trainings and, in collaboration with institutions of higher learning, to study their effectiveness and psychological impact. Local school systems are required to provide advance notice of drills or trainings, provide follow-up afterwards, and identify and provide resources for anyone that's traumatized. Anyone means other people in the building as well, and collect data for their effectiveness and psychological impact. Finally, MCSS must develop model content for the state's firearm storage laws for distribution to parents. Move the bill.
Any discussion on the bill? Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, House Bill 416 passes favorably. House Bill 434, Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. House Bill 434, persons providing lobbyist compensation, statement of political contributions, exemption for nonprofits. This bill exempts 501c3 organizations that employ a lobbyist from the requirement to report political contributions. The reason for this is that they already cannot make political contributions, and so should not be anything for them to report. So I move, there are no amendments, so I move this bill favorable.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, House Bill 434 passes favorably. House Bill 436, Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. House Bill 436, election law, voter registration, age, and notification to minors. This bill has a wonderful sponsor from the subcommittee, and it allows individuals to become registered to vote at 15 and 9 months. It also requires that registered voters under 18 be notified when they become eligible to vote. And you may recall that the purpose for this bill is that 15 and 9 months is usually when a young person is first interacting with the MVA, and it makes more sense for them to be able to register to vote at this point.
Is there a motion on the bill?
Move favorable.
Any discussion? Okay, we're going to do a roll call on House Bill 436. Madam Vice Chair?
Yes.
Delegate Ebersol? Yes. Delegate Patterson? Yes, me too. There's no amendments on this one, so we can't add on. And just so everyone's clear, the reason we do it when there's amendments, because council, they already have to draft the amendments, but we don't want to burden them with every single bill. And we don't want you all standing up on the floor going, this amendment is for co-sponsors, because that's kind of silly. So where was I? Delegate Buckle. Delegate Wells. Delegate Hornberger. Delegate Fair. Delegate Long. Delegate Young. Delegate Miller. Delegate Henson. Delegate Roberts. Delegate Grossman. Delegate Wims. Delegate Vogel. Delegate Wu. Delegate Hartman. Delegate Miracle North. Delegate Griffith. Delegate Attar. Delegate Plakovich Carr. Delegate Feldmark. House Bill 436 passes out of committee as favorable. House Bill 453, Delegate Feldmark.
Thank you, Madam Chair. House Bill 453 makes technical corrections by repealing obsolete provisions of the tax general article relating to the distribution of income tax revenue and correcting an erroneous cross-reference relating to the catalytic revitalization project tax credit. Move favorable.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor of House Bill 453 signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? House Bill 453 passes as favorable. House Bill 472, and there are amendments. Delegate Ebersol.
Chair, this bill creates a school mapping data program and the program provides funding for each county board of education to produce school mapping data for each public school in the county. Mapping data must be in a certain specified format. Funding for the program is provided through the Safe Schools Fund, which is administered by the Safe Schools Subcabinet. The amendment alters the group responsible for school mapping data program and changing it from the Maryland State Department of Education to the Interagency Coordinating Council, which is primarily responsible for school construction. MSDE is very pleased with that change, and IACC is happy to take it on. Move the amendment.
Any discussion on the amendment? Okay, is there a motion on the bill?
Second.
Any discussion on the bill as amended? Okay, all in favor of the favorable on the bill as amended signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? House Bill 472. Oh, okay. So raise your hand if you would like to be a me too on the bill. Okay, what'd you say? Yeah. Delegate Wells, tell me if I'm going too fast. Madam Vice Chair, Delegate Ebersol, Delegate Hornberger, yeah, I said Delegate Wells, Delegate Fair, Delegate Miller, Delegate Henson, Delegate Roberts, Delegate Grossman, Delegate Wims, Delegate Vogel, Delegate Wu, Delegate Miracle North, Delegate Griffith, and Delegate Attar. I was trying to go slow, so you're like, not too slow, but. Okay, House Bill 522, and there are amendments. Delegate Ebersol.
Thank you, Madam Chair. House Bill 522, this bill requires each county board of education to adopt a policy for high schools and middle schools that accommodates students who need to participate in telehealth appointment during the school day. Telehealth space must be private and have internet access and be configured to make it easy to do so. The bill does not require schools to build additional space for this. We have an amendment that clarifies that the bill should not be construed to alter the responsibilities of a healthcare provider regarding the disclosure of medical records, including the authority to disclose information in case of an emergency. It will reference the health article, and the key there is that medical practitioners can alert people to someone if they are in an emergency situation, especially if they're in the school building, they could let someone know. Move the amendment.
Any discussion on the amendment? Delegate Henson?
An amendment that's in the packet that's printed, and then one in my email, and it's on page, I think, 3 of what we have in the printed packet, lines 6 through 11. Are there any amendments to that portion of the bill?
I don't have the bill directly in front of me. Maybe council can.
Say page 3.
Lines 6 through 11.
6 through 11.
Are you referring to? Is this about the internet access and including at least one seating option? Is that the right bill?
I'm on the wrong bill, actually.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Scared me.
I'll hold that question.
I don't know what she's talking about. I'm better.
Any discussion on the amendment?
The amendment.
Okay, all in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Move the bill as amended.
Is there a discussion on the bill as amended? Okay, we're going to do a roll call on the favorable as amended on House Bill 522. Madam Vice Chair.
Yes.
Delegate Ebersol.
Yes.
Delegate Patterson.
Yes.
Delegate Buckle. No. Delegate Wells. Yes. Delegate Hornberger. Delegate Fair. Delegate Long. No. Delegate Young. Delegate Miller. Delegate Henson. Delegate Roberts. Delegate Grossman. Delegate Wims. Delegate Vogel. Delegate Wu. Delegate Hartman. Delegate Miracle North. Delegate Griffith. Delegate Attar. Delegate Plakovich Carr. Delegate Feldmark. House Bill 522 passes favorably as amended. House Bill 558, and there is an amendment, Delegate Fair.
We have a committee amendment too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Delegate Eversole.
All right. Bill requires MSDE in consultation with the Maryland Department of Health to adopt a comprehensive health education framework that at a minimum includes several specific topics. Each county board of education must create its own age-appropriate curriculum based on the framework, working with health experts, local community members, and educators. In doing so, they create a committee, actually. Parents are able to opt their children out of subject matters relating to family life, human sexuality, gender identity, sexual orientation, but are prohibited in the bill as it currently stands from opting students out of education related to HIV or AIDS prevention. Alternative learning opportunities must be made available to students who opt out. The First Amendment is work that we would like to add safe and appropriate social media and internet use to the specific topics that the framework must incorporate. I'd like to move that amendment.
Second. I seconded it.
Now you got to take a vote?
Oh,
You're
yeah.
the chair.
You're right.
I got all
Any
day.
discussion on the amendment? Delegate Young.
Be open to adding artificial intelligence to that.
I don't know what that
I
is.
would say, my response is, I think it would be off subject here, although I don't know.
Did you say artificial intelligence?
That's correct.
Well, we have to, this
So let's do this
amendment
amendment.
has been moved and seconded, so we have to deal with this amendment.
No, the question is on the amendment, is to add AI to the amendment.
You can't amend the amendment.
You can,
You can suggest another amendment.
can't amend the amendment.
would like to deal with this amendment.
Right.
That might be another.
I can withdraw it. I just throw it out there. If it's too much, it doesn't have to be.
Okay. So, any other discussion on the amendment? All in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the amendment passes as favorable. Delegate Fair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I make a motion for an amendment to strike the words beginning on page 3, line 9, or the gender identity and sexual orientation from the bill so that it aligns better with the existing framework, which already has the opt-out provision for family life and human sexuality. I move the amendment.
Okay, discussion. Buckle. Delegate Buckle.
So explain that in a way that doesn't require me to read through the entire bill again. So you want to do what with the gender something in the other section? I lost that. We don't normally amend the bills here on the floor, so to speak, so.
Very simple. The amendment will strike the exact words as I listed them on page 3, line 9 that read exactly or the gender identity and sexual orientation from the bill.
So you're striking that from the bill, so does that then say?
No, Delegate Buckle. So what Delegate Fair is doing is you can opt out. He's focused on the opt-out provision. So you can opt out of the family life and human sexuality. You cannot opt out of the other portion.
The portion
Gender
of the
identity.
And at what age would that curriculum or grade level begin or be taught?
So that is not covered in this bill. That information is covered in existing education codes.
So tell me what it is in the existing education code before I vote on it then.
So the bill says that it has to be age appropriate and that it's left up to the local jurisdictions to decide what that is.
Okay.
And if I may add that it is presented in an age-appropriate fashion at all times.
And this is, what's in the bill is a framework, so the counties actually convene a committee that will decide how to invoke that framework.
Correct. The commit is,
Ultimate ability then, if the county convenes, I recall some of this from last year now, if the county convenes a committee and says, this is what we determine is the age-appropriate methodology to teach on these subjects, and you can't opt out of it as a parent, does the county's final word stick, or does the state have the ability to say that doesn't comply with our framework or with our methodology?
There are existing opt-out provisions that are already built into the bill, as well as in other areas of our education code in the framework that's been passed by the Maryland General Assembly.
okay, so to answer the question, and I'll direct who's answering what, so we can keep some
my
control of the
apologies.
situation. So the bill on page 3 says, in developing a curriculum under this paragraph, each county board shall establish a committee composed of educators, health experts, and members of the local community. So it's whatever that local board decides. So no, if they decide it's 16, then it's 16.
Thank you.
Delegate Miller.
Okay, that would not be my understanding in codifying a framework, because in the framework, gender identity and sexual orientation are listed under the family life and health provision, which does start as far as gender identity in kindergarten. It is in that section. So if we codify a framework, that is the existing framework that is currently out now. That is what they would have to follow. You can adjust your curriculum, but you have to follow the framework.
So the current framework, I'm looking at it and reading it. In kindergarten, it states, recognize a range of ways people identify and express their gender. Recognize it is important to treat people of all gender identities and expressions with dignity and respect. So
Right.
that's the framework for kindergarten.
What topic is that under? At the top of it?
Healthy relationship, gender identity and expressions.
And it's under the family life aspect of it. So if you remove that from the opt-out, then you're removing their ability to, it actually would put it in conflict. Sure. It would actually put it into conflict as far as the subsection of that.
Yeah, I believe the statute would overrule the regulation. So it's a reg right now, which isn't being followed. If we made it law, then, the jurisdictions would have to follow it. So since the statute would trump the regulations, it would be whatever that local jurisdiction came up with.
Right, but by codifying the framework that has those terms in it and then taking that availability to opt out of it,
Well, I think
is
you're
different.
you're being very specific. This isn't saying we are
Yes.
codifying the framework. That's not what the bill says. The bill simply says that a comprehensive health education framework shall at a minimum include these things. We didn't take the entire health framework and put it into statute.
That
So
is the
yours-
current accepted framework, though. That's the current.
The current framework is over 50 pages. We are not codifying all of the framework, which is what you are stating. We are not codifying the entire framework. We're codifying a process to create framework, saying at a minimum, you have to include these things.
It seems to me that we can agree to disagree on that. It seems to me that we're codifying the framework.
Delegate Henson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I received the text of the amendment that was made in an email, and I think it's different than what I have in my printed packet, and I think that's where my earlier confusion came from, so I apologize to any of the committee members I confused. The staff puts a lot of time into making sure that we're prepared for these meetings, and I try to honor that by reading through them and preparing and coming to the committee ready, although you couldn't tell by me asking that question in the previous bill. But it would have been great to have a little more time to understand and to go back and to benefit from the subcommittee's discussion on this to really make sure that I was considering this from all sides. I know that we have had several other bills that have sought to put more frameworks in place to make sure that the quality of the content that we're sharing with our students is high quality, that they're not exposed to obscene materials and things of that nature. And I know that we have not saw fit as a committee to move forward with any of those bills. And it just seems like to take away a parent's ability to understand their child, to understand their family, to understand the things the children are exposed to at home, and to put all of this knowledge into context. We are taking that ability away from parents with this amendment. And then we also, at the same time, are not taking advantage of some opportunities to figure out how we really curate the quality of that content to make sure that children are not exposed to obscene materials and things of that nature. So when I look at the amendment in a vacuum, it's a different analysis than looking at the amendment in the context of everything else that we've done as a committee. And it gives me a lot of trepidation to say that we would take the parents out of this equation and that they would not be able to opt out of content that, you know, because I feel, it's obvious from my comments that I feel there are more things we could do to make sure that the quality of this content is not unnecessarily exposing children to obscene materials. We had a particular book that was lifted up by members of the public in their oral and written testimony, and I checked with my local school system to see if the book was available in Anne Arundel County, and it is at our public library, and it is in our public schools as well. And the book does not have any age restriction on who can view it. In our public library, it is in an adult section, but there is nothing that prohibits a child from going to that section, reviewing the material, checking out the material, or having it. So understanding that we are not putting those sorts of, in my opinion, safeguards in place to safeguard children from obscene material in that context, to think that we now also are not allowing parents to actively engage that, it gives me a lot of pause and a lot of trepidation. And for that reason, I won't be able to support the amendment, but I do want to wholeheartedly offer my support on anything that we can do that kind of ties that thread together more neatly between what we can do with our responsibility to safeguard children's access to certain materials, and then to actively engage parents to be an active participant in this process as well. Thank you.
So I appreciate your comments. We have a lot of bills related to books and what's in our library, so we are going to be dealing with those all at once. And that is not the subject of this legislation. Currently, the current health curricula, which is not law, it's regulation guided by MSDE, states that the family life and human sexuality component of the regulation and framework represents all students regardless of ability, sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression. The framework ensures students have access to scientifically and medically accurate information, and that all students are treated equitably and with dignity and respect. So my purpose in putting this forward is as a mother, and it is as a parent. As an African American mother, I want my children to go to school and feel represented and be reflected in their teachers. And I'm certain that members of the LGBTQ community would like their children to go to school and be reflected in what they're learning as well. I also, after having spent 7 years on the Judiciary Committee, am painfully aware of how children are incredibly vulnerable and are taken advantage of. And it really keeps me up, that is not an exaggeration, thinking of how children can be sexually exploited, can be molested, and can be taken advantage of if they don't know what the right thing is that they should be engaged in, and when it's appropriate to do so, quite frankly. And so I think that having this in the health curriculum for me is a safety concern for students, quite frankly. And so that's why I believe it's important for students not to be able to opt out of the gender identity and sexual orientation portion of the bill, because there are those students that have no one to talk to. They can't talk to their family, they can't talk to their parents, they can't talk to their peers for fear of what those individuals might do to them. And so learning the appropriate things at the appropriate age, and it will be approved by the local school board. I'm confident that my school board in Howard County wouldn't be showing obscene materials in teaching this lesson. And I'm confident that they would do it at an age-appropriate time. So that was my purpose in removing that opt-out portion of the bill. I know I just received a couple months ago, my oldest is in 6th grade, and I got the email, do you want to opt out of family life and human sexuality? And I said no, because, well, you don't have to respond if you say no, and I told my 12-year-old, you need to pay attention, you need to listen, you don't need to be a silly boy in there, he and blah, blah, because you need to know what is correct and what is the appropriate thing to do. Delegate Vogel.
Well, first of all, thank you, Madam Chair, for this bill, and thank you for those remarks. I couldn't agree more. I see, and I was listening to my colleagues who I have a lot of respect for talk about this amendment, and I want to be clear because I will support the amendment. I understand concerns around family life and human sexuality. When we are allowing and codifying the idea of opting out from lessons on sexual orientation and gender identity, which we've already discussed are age-appropriate lessons, there's a dehumanizing element to that, saying that people should be able to leave the classroom when you're learning about gay people or trans people, right? Children who might be in that classroom as well, children whose parents might be in a same-sex relationship. The idea of codifying in state law that is something that parents can opt students out of, to me, that's not something that makes me feel comfortable as a Marylander. So I'm hoping that we can move this amendment. I'm hoping that we can move forward on this legislation, and I'm hoping that we can recognize that there is nothing obscene, right, about learning about individuals who might have a different sexual identity or gender identity. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Delegate Griffith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I have a couple questions, but this is an educational piece for me. What's the difference between human sexuality and gender identity and family life? Is my understanding that, the LGBT community, doesn't see a difference. They're both family life. They're both gender identity. I mean, whether you're heterosexual, cis, not whatever. So why are we drawing a distinction between the two here? Doesn't this actually create a separate class of citizen by differentiating them?
You want me to answer it? Sorry, thank you. So I think the easiest way to answer that is to say that it actually shouldn't be separated in this bill. So that's why we're deleting the line from the bill. Gender identity and sexual orientation doesn't belong in that spot, and so we're removing it completely.
So under that interpretation, gender identity and sexual orientation would be automatically wrapped into family life and human sexuality. Therefore, because we're considering them the same, therefore, if you opt out of family life and human sexuality, you are also opting out of gender identity and sexual orientation. Is that correct?
That is not what the bill says.
So we are separating them out then?
We're looking at it and we're giving the local school boards the authority to take the existing framework as we've outlined it, and we are saying that you should not be able to opt out of learning that queer people exist, that trans people exist, etc.
So you can opt out of heterosexual sexual topics, but not out of. And I'm not trying to make the differentiation. The bill is.
If you're
and I'm trying to understand, like it's the same or it's not. And I think largely most people feel it's the same. So if this bill is actually being discriminatory and saying that it's different from. If it's all the same, it's all the same. I don't understand.
Parents absolutely have the right to look at all human sexuality, and that is a very, very large, binary or a very large spectrum there. And they're able to look at that curriculum in family life and human sexuality and say that we want to opt out. But that affects all human sexuality and all family life. It's not a pick and choose your adventure kind of thing for parents.
Well, and just to go back to my original question, then because I just don't understand. What's the difference between sexual orientation and gender identity and family life and human sexuality? Because I don't understand the difference.
Family life and human sexuality encompasses the entire community. That is, if you identify as a straight human, then that includes your human sexuality, being straight is a sexuality, as well as it includes mine as a gay man. It does not, by singling out sexual orientation and gender identity, actually creates the exact system that you're trying to avoid.
Again, so going back to my original point, where I'm having a hard time wrapping my brain around, then under your explanation there, which I'm not pushing back on, which is where I'm getting at, then wouldn't gender identity and sexual orientation then naturally be rolled into the entire umbrella because you're saying it's the same, then it should be recognized as the same. If it's different and you choose to,
That's what I'm trying to say. The opt-out provision for family life and human sexuality section of the bill is there for parents to choose. And family life and human sexuality encompasses all family life and human sexuality.
I don't want to belabor the point, but if it's all the same, then it should all be the same. And if it's different, then it's different. And I don't understand why we're making it different here.
Because we understand that sexual orientation and gender identity are also unique things that need to be explored individually, and that's what the bill does.
Delegate Ebersol.
Thank you.
Sexuality, thank you, Madam Chair. I believe the human sexuality, if a parent opts out of that, they're opting out of, if you will, the whole ball of wax, okay? And so that would be a decision they would make for none of that instruction to occur, and that we're not separating them out. If they say they don't want that, then they don't want that and gender identity, okay? All of the things that are in there. So it's not separating them out, it's putting them together and say, you want it all or you don't want it at all. And that's the way the amendment reads. That help?
Question based on what you just said. So is what you're saying?
Delegate Buckle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So is what you're saying that you're allowed to opt out of human sexuality? I think that's what's called family
life.
You know,
human
I'm not
sexuality.
wonderful with some of the terminology, and I tried.
I can help.
So you can opt out of the entire envelope, and the entire envelope includes the gender identity, gender diversity, the things that my friend from Frederick discussed.
If I may just interrupt.
Okay.
There are lots of things in the framework that are not family life and human sexuality, okay?
Right.
That's just one piece of it. There are 7 or 8 others. We added one
Okay,
earlier just
this is
now.
all, I'm just trying to
But
get to
that,
this
but
one
that's
vote.
that's one part of the framework, and that's the part of the framework that we're focusing on for opt-out here.
So I can opt out, or opt my child out of the entire family
Ball of
human
wax.
sexuality envelope.
Right.
And that includes the gender identity portion of that curriculum. But I can't say I want all of the envelope except the gender identity portion.
I believe that's how I understand it, yes.
Okay, that's more clarifying. Thank you.
Delegate Vogel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just to respond to my colleague here, you know, I think we have to recognize that when we talk about gender identity and sexual orientation, we're not always talking about sex, right? We're not always talking about what you would get in a human sexuality classroom. Back to the chair's remarks from earlier, and again, we're conducting this in an age-appropriate manner. But if you have a lesson in first grade where you're teaching that a child could have 2 male parents, that's discussing gender identity and sexual orientation. And my concern is that under the language without this amendment, we would be allowing parents to opt out their child of a lesson that isn't talking about sex. It's simply talking about the existence of individuals who might share, who might have a different sexual orientation or gender identity. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Delegate Miller.
No, it wasn't. Now it is. It was not on.
Delegate Henson, is your button on? Okay, Delegate Henson.
I want to thank my colleague from Hartford County for the question and the clarity on it. Having understood now that, if I'm understanding it correctly, that the purpose of the amendment would be simply to strike the language that singles out gender identity and sexual orientation, but that gender identity and sexual orientation is in fact included in human sexuality. So the right for parents to make decisions as a family is preserved under that context. It's simply that you can't say, I want a part of the topic and not the other part of the topic. Having had the opportunity to understand that better, if I'm understanding that correctly, then I would in fact support the amendment. Thank you.
Delegate Young.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to make sure I'm looking at the right document before I ask the question. I'm looking at the email that Sarah sent at about this afternoon, correct? So, and I want to be clear, I support all of the teaching that needs to happen under the bill, but I'm concerned about how it's written because, and so I'm asking for clarity. When we look at the framework and the various sections at minimum, I'm looking at line 20, family life and human sexuality, line 21, gender identity and sexual orientation, separate, correct? So then when I go to the next page, line 9, we cancel out what's equivalent to what's in line 21 on the previous page, section 5. But then I just heard where everything is a subset of human sexuality, and that an individual parent could opt people out of the whole gamut. My challenge is, as drafted, it doesn't seem that way to me because we have specifically articulated gender identity and sexual orientation as a separate section that now cannot be opted out. But then I also heard that the whole gamut can be opted out. That's a contradiction I need to be clarified.
I'm going to ask Alistair to explain it.
Sorry. So that's correct. Gender identity and sexual orientation, if the amendment is adopted, is a required piece that's taught that cannot be opted out of, just like all the other things: health promotion, mental and emotional health, substance abuse prevention, safety and violence prevention, healthy eating, etc. Anything within any of those topics or any other topics that relate to family life and human sexuality can be opted out of, but those specific topics must be taught in some form that's age appropriate and developed by the local school system in conjunction with local public officials.
So I just want to be clear for the record then, so you cannot opt out of the whole gamut, what I'm hearing. Okay, that's what I'm just wondering. Thank you.
Delegate Buckle.
I just want to clarify too, and I don't blame anybody. It's a complex issue, but we are kind of all over the place, to be bluntly honest. So, Alistair, may have a good concept of that. Is what you just read to me suggests that you can opt out of the human sexuality curriculum, but you cannot opt out of the gender diversity along with some of the other things. So I can opt out of human sexuality, but I can't opt out of the gender diversity as long as I couldn't opt out of some of the other eating disorders and things of that you just mentioned. That's the case? That's what the amendment would do? Thank you.
Delegate Wells.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to my colleagues for the rich discussion. So this is a very, very basic question that I think I know the answer to, but I want to can someone just articulate when there is an opt-out, mechanically, how does that work, right? I think that's just, if we can kind of get back to the basics, I feel like we've gone around. So what does that mean in terms of, I opt out of taking this, the class, whatever it's called, but I have to still take. Please explain what that means I'd be exposed to and how it happened.
So each local jurisdiction has to come up with a process of how they ask the parent if they want to opt out. I think it is mostly done the way it's done in Howard County. I received an email that said in the coming weeks or on this specific date, your child will be learning about family life and human sexuality. I received that email. It listed, it was a very long email. If you choose to opt out, you will receive an alternative curriculum that's appropriate, and you have to respond to that email and say, I would like my child to opt out. That is how it happens in Howard County. I would imagine that's how it's done. In most counties, you fill out your family file on the Canvas or whatever your county uses, and however you say you want to be communicated with is how they communicate with you. Any other discussion? We're going to do a roll call on the amendment. So the motion was for a favorable on the amendment, which essentially would not permit you to opt out of the gender identity portion of the curriculum. On the favorable for the amendment, the chair votes yes. Madam Vice Chair.
Yes.
Delegate Ebersol.
Yes.
Delegate Patterson. Delegate Buckle. No. Delegate Wells.
Yes.
Delegate Hornberger. Delegate Fair.
Yes.
Delegate Long. Delegate Young. Delegate Miller. Delegate Henson. Delegate Roberts. Delegate Grossman. Delegate Wims. Yes. Delegate Vogel. Yes. Delegate Wu. Yes. Delegate Hartman. Delegate Miracle North. Delegate Griffith. Delegate Attar. Delegate Polakovich-Carr. Delegate Feldmark.
Yes.
The amendment passes as favorable. Any discussion on the bill as amended? Okay, we are going to do a roll call on the bill as amended. Madam Vice Chair.
Yes.
Delegate Ebersol, Delegate Patterson, Delegate Buckle. Yes.
Supreme Court Justice once said, I can't define pornography, but I know it when I see it. And my major problem with this subject matter, and I think it's a lot of people's problem, is we don't know what we're talking about specifically when we talk about content. My friends on the committee, who I have a tremendous amount of respect for, talk about seeing people for who they are and people who may have, you know, two daddies, two mommies, and I don't think that any of us would have objections to that type of content. The problem becomes we seem to be in this committee, we're having the conversations in a vacuum. We do not know what the content really looks like for a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old and an 11-year-old and so on and so forth. And because of that, I think that's why we get bogged down with the issues. There's a lot of good faith of trying to teach children to be kind to everyone, regardless of their background or their gender identity or any of those issues, while also preserving the fact that children are children and probably need to not know quite so much about sexuality and sexual impulses and sexual thoughts. They do not need, in essence, to be sexualized, particularly at elementary school ages. And because of that, and only because of that, I think that people put in a lot of hard work on the bill to try to make it better, so to speak. But because of the reality that I don't know what the content is, and I don't know what the opt-outs and the opt-ins, I don't know. I don't think anyone can tell you, I know what this is going to do for children in every county. I will vote no against the bill. Thank you.
Delegate Wells. You got the me too. Delegate Hornberger. Delegate Fair. Yes. Delegate Long. Delegate Young. Delegate Miller. Delegate Henson. Delegate Roberts.
So before I vote, I just want to say I'm a mother of a 12-year-old, and I don't understand the subject matter at hand, and the good delegate and I have had conversation, and I'm going to continue to ask those questions so that I can be more knowledgeable. And if I am not comfortable, and I'm comfortable saying that if I'm a parent, I'm comfortable saying that if you are a parent and this is what they're going to teach, and it's all going to be included, I'm comfortable saying you have the option of opting out of the whole thing, but I know that what I do is I reinforce. I'm very involved in my daughter's life so that she will understand in a way that she has her own choices and who she is and who I am. So with that, I'm going to say that I'm very comfortable voting. I'm in favor, so that's yes.
Delegate Grossman. Delegate Wims. Delegate Vogel. Delegate Wu. Delegate Hartman. Delegate Muir-Q North. Delegate Griffith. Delegate Attar. Delegate Plakovich-Carr. Delegate Feldmark. Chris, me too. And the chair votes yes. Okay, House Bill 558 passes favorably as amended. House Bill 620, Delegate Ebersol.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This bill requires that educational program of awareness and prevention of sexual abuse and assault include for students in grades 6 through 8 material promoting awareness and prevention of human sex trafficking as well. We passed this bill last year. I move favorable.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? House Bill 620 passes favorably. House Bill 662, Delegate Plakovich-Carr.
Madam Chair, House Bill 662 simply changes the age at which someone can be a child care provider in a large family child care home or child care center from 19 to 18. Move favorable.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? House Bill 662 passes favorably. House Bill 825, Delegate Plakovich-Carr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. House Bill 825 alters the membership of the Governing Board of Library Regional Resource Centers. Under current law, the Governing Board consists of a library trustee from each library system that is part of the region and up to one member of the public from each area in the region. The bill alters the membership by allowing up to 2 members from each public area to serve as board members. Move favorable.
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of House Bill 825, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? House Bill 825 passes as favorable. We have 2 withdrawns, House Bill 160 and House Bill 294. Is there a motion on the favorable of the withdrawal?
Yes, Madam Chair, I move on favorable as a consent calendar on the 2 withdrawn.
Thank you. Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that concludes the voting session for today. Everybody have a great weekend.